Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 9 articles in this episode for you, and all the URLs are in the description of the video. It would appear that renaming the video has helped somewhat on the garbled audio, so maybe it is censorship. We'll play it a few more days and see what goes on. Interesting. Can't make this stuff up. First article that I have for you is off of Liberty Writers News, and it says, breaking, President Trump just signed a new order that will completely drain the swamp. And we get it to scroll up here a little bit. It says, today is by far the most historic day of the Trump presidency. While so many politicians talk about trimming the fat in Washington, Trump just issued a mandate that will actually drain the swamp. During his first ever cabinet meeting, President Trump signed a new mandate ordering his cabinet to immediately eliminate unnecessary agencies, components of agencies, and agency programs. This is not just talk either. The mandate was handed directly to the Office of Management and Budget Director Mick Mulkey. All the agencies will now have 180 days to submit a plan to end wasteful spending or risk being closed down. He is giving power back to the American public, too. Under the order, the public will have the opportunity to suggest improvements to the executive branch during the 180-day period. The order reads, the proposed plan shall include, as appropriate, recommendations to eliminate unnecessary agencies, components of agencies, and agency programs to merge functions. The proposed plan shall include recommendations for any legalization or administrative measures administrative measures necessary to achieve the proposed reorganization. So basically, agencies that by their existence or programs by proving the cost is worth the benefit will be merged into other agencies or simply shut down. This, if you'd like to pull it up to look at it, it says power to the people, draining the swamp, government accountability. Donald Trump has kept all of his promises so far. The next article I have is off of BizPac Review, and as Nancy Pelosi wants Steve King's head for racist remarks, only she just barked up the wrong tree. If the old World War II era adage, if you're not catching flack, you're not over the target, applies to politics at all, and it does, Representative Steve King flew right into the wolf's lair with his spot-on analysis of the fate of Western civilization. And the enemy is coming for him full bore. He tweeted out, Wilders understands that culture and demographics are our destiny. We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies. To his credit, King has ticked off all the right people, including rhino Republicans like Paul Ryan, the mainstream media, and every Democrat on the planet, including, predictably, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who demanded on Tuesday that the heretic be punished for daring to speak aloud what must not be spoken, and thus offending the diversity gods or something. For his sins, Pelosi would like to see King stripped of his post as chairman of the subcommittee on the Constitution and Civil Justice and burned alive at the stake to appease the god Molech. Steve King's racist statements must be called out as unacceptable, and the tepid brush-off response from the speaker and the GOP leader is disgraceful, Pelosi bleated, adding, according to the Washington Times, that President Trump and Steve Bannon have set the bar too low in Washington. When Republican Congressman Steve King made his latest disgusting racist statements, I called on Speaker Ryan and the Republican leadership to immediately strip his chairmanship of the Constitution Subcommittee, Pelosi said in a statement. Since then, Congressman Steve King has doubled down on his statements, so I am doubling down on mine, she says. Congressman King has clarified his remarks to both Tucker Carlson and the Washington Times, saying he was speaking of culture, not race, and the fact that the United States must do a better job assimilating immigrants it takes in. Didn't exactly back King's statement. Of course, they aren't taking flack from Pelosi either. In fact, Ryan's spokeswoman, Ashley Strong, told the Huffington Post of Pelosi's demand, we'll get back at you on this as soon as Nancy Pelosi responds to the grotesque sexual comments a member of her caucus made about senior female White House aide. The hypocrisy is striking. Apparently, Ryan and crew are still waiting for Dems to properly respond to Louisiana Representative Cedric Richmond's crude sexual joke about White House counselor Kellyanne Conway. With these hypocrites, they'll be waiting a long time. Article I have is off of Liberty Writers. It says, oh my God, once this video of Nancy Pelosi gets out, nobody will vote for her ever again. Oh, we could only hope. No comprende, no comprende. You got to see this. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi took a photo op with a bunch of illegal immigrants on the southern border, and it backfired big time when the Dem leader tried to talk to him in English. Pelosi and U.S. Representative Vince Gonzalez visited the shelter in McAllen, Texas. When she visited, she asked one of the people lying on the cots, "You're going to San Jose?" There was no reaction. And there's video of this. And it says laughing out loud, out loud, out loud, out loud, out loud, out loud. Nancy Pelosi is just a failure. Ha 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 ha. How can she still have a position? The fact the Democrats named her is embarrassing. They're not sending their best people anymore. The best part is Nancy Pelosi tweeted the following, and says, in addition to Lupe immigration event, former Nancy Pelosi will speak at a fundraiser for U.S. Representative Vicente Gonzalez at McAllen Country Club. The optimism and dreams that immigrants bring with them make America more American. That is something to be cherished, she wrote before adding the hashtag no ban, no wall, no raids. And she tweets out, the optimism and dreams that immigrants bring with them make America more American. That is something to be cherished. But in all seriousness, how are illegal immigrants any different than slave labor? I mean, seriously, the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. It has always been and always will be. The only way that socialism works with slave labor. That's why Democrats pretend like they stand up for these people when they really just want to use them. Next article is off Liberty Writers, and it says, reporters asked Spicer if Trump would donate his salary. What Sean said next is shocking. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said on Monday that President Trump would donate his salary at the end of the year. He put all of their yammering to bed. The president's intention right now is to donate his salary at the end of the year, and he has kindly asked you all determine where that goes, said Spicer on Monday. That way, the way that we can avoid scrutiny is to let the press corps determine where it should go, he continued, provoking laughter from reporters attending the briefing. And there is video on this if you want to see it. And the article continues. It says, Trump said that he wouldn't take the salary as president, and he's going to follow through with that pledge. He even made this claim at the press conference. In all seriousness, I think his view is he made a pledge to the American people. He wants to donate it to charity, and he would love your help to determine where it should go, Spicer said. Of NBC put out a tweet that says, Spicer says Trump will donate his salary at the end of the year and is taking recs from White House press corps on where it goes. I vote free. Try this again. I vote press freedom, she says. Isn't that just wonderful? Trump is going to let the nasty press donate it so that the decision is theirs. Let's see them try and spin that. The next one that I have here, pagemag.com, and it says another American city destroyed by the Democrats. American politics is dominated by an enduring myth, writes author Peter Collier. The myth that Democrats are the party of the common man, the voiceless, powerless, the poor, that if you care about what happens to the least among us, you will cast your vote in the Democratic column. But as Collier also points out, the vast majority of America's voiceless, powerless, and impoverished people are concentrated in cities that have been run exclusively by Democrats for decades, even generations, without interruption. These are the cities where Stratospheric rates of crime, poverty, unemployment, out of wedlock births, homes without fathers, and failed school systems have become a way of life, along with oppressive confiscatory taxes, whose only discernible achievement is to keep the leaky ship of the city government afloat for as long as possible before it is inevitably capsized by economic and social calamity. Minneapolis, Minnesota is perhaps the least likely case in point. Camouflaged by the state as a whole, a synonym for plain-spoken stability, it is just one of many American cities that were once thriving centers of industry, prosperity, and optimism until Democrats took them over. Since 1978, Minneapolis has been governed exclusively by mayors from the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, called the DFLP, the state affiliate of the Democratic Party. Prior to this long era of Democratic dominance, Minneapolis's poverty rate was consistently lower than the national average. Throughout the 1980s, when the trickle-down of the Reagan economic boom had a positive effect on cities nationwide, Minneapolis shared in these good times, adding some 3,000 new jobs to its downtown area each year from 1981 through 1987. As of 1983, only 8% of the city's metropolitan area population lived below poverty level, as compared to approximately 15% of the national population. But in 1988, then Mayor Donald Frazier, a member of the DFLP, had grown troubled by the stark contrast saw between the majority of his city and who were thriving economically, and a number of African American neighborhoods where crime, teenage pregnancy, and welfare dependency were experiencing a growth spurt. Taking a page out of the same playbook other big city Democratic mayors were using, Frazier believed that the cure was redistribution of income. He decided to revamp the way in which social welfare expenditures were allocated, and believed specifically that federal and local agencies need to focus more of their resources on the economic problems confronting their unwed mothers, who were disproportionately Black, and their children. The result has been disastrous. As of 2015, the poverty rate in Minneapolis was 25.3%, nearly twice the 14% statewide rate for Minnesota, and 14%, and the 14.3% rate for the United States as a whole. In 2010, a study of 142 metro areas in Minnesota found that only 15 bore a heavier property tax burden than Minneapolis. And that was before the city raised its property taxes by 4.7% in 2011. More recently, Minneapolis property taxes increased by 3.4% in 2016 and by a crippling 5.5% in 2017. Notwithstanding the growth in revenues generated by these taxes, the government of Minneapolis has been incapable of balancing its budget. In 2015, for example, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority's budget included $84 million in federal subsidies and grants. In 2017, the Metropolitan Council, which describes itself as regional policy-making body, planning agency, and provider of essential services for the Twin Cities metropolitan region, received $91 million in federal funding. That same year, the Minneapolis Public Schools operated with a budget deficit of nearly $17 million. Massive deficits, increasing dependency on federal assistance, have done nothing to persuade the political leaders of Minneapolis to question their zealous devotion to the leftist political solutions, including an unwavering commitment to the sanctuary policies that prevent city employees from assisting federal immigration authorities. When President Donald Trump in 2017 announced that he planned to cut off all federal funding for sanctuary cities, for instance, Minneapolis Mayor Betsy Hodges stated defiantly, "As long as I stand as mayor, he's going to have to get through me." Just as Minneapolis residents face daunting economic challenges, so have they had to learn to live with the city's sizable crime problem. In the early 1990s, crime began trending downward in much of the U.S. for various reasons, including the decline of crack cocaine epidemic, more aggressive policing strategies, and harsher punishments for criminal behavior. Minneapolis was slow to adopt the new law enforcement and criminal justice strategies and thus lagged behind the national trend for several years. Today, crime rates in the city remain far higher than statewide and national figures alike. In 2015, the violent crime rate in Minneapolis encompassed homicide, rape, robbery, and assault was about 3 times higher than the national average. All told, Minneapolis ranks among the most dangerous 5% of all cities in the United States. The other American cities, Minneapolis offers melancholy testimony for the bankruptcy of Democratic Party urban policies. Under the guise of compassion, Democrats have exploited the residents of these cities as a means to ever more entrenched political power, using them as a captive electoral bloc every national election, while allowing their life prospects to continue to erode. Like so many other Democrat-run cities, Minneapolis is the urban equivalent of a captive nation, its residents watching on their civic life decline while the cynics who control their prospects continue to make their city a mad laboratory for failed policies and stolen dreams. All I have for you is off of BizPac Review. Lou Dobbs is smoking mad. Paul Ryan's a do-nothing loser, and he needs to vacate the Speaker's office as soon as possible. It's time for Rhino ringleader Paul Ryan to hit the road. That's what Fox Business anchor Lou Dobbs said in a response to what he calls a campaign by the Speaker of the House to destroy Donald Trump. He had achieved next to nothing in his entire career before becoming Speaker, and he's worked against his party presidential nominee, and he lost. Dobbs said he put forward a mantra instead of policies. He lost again. It's time for Ryan to vacate the Speaker's office in the interest of his party and, in fact, the nation. Dobbs' fiery remarks came one day after an audio recording of Paul Ryan was released, where he's heard telling fellow Republicans in October of 2016 that he had no intention of defending then-candidate Donald Trump from the media's relentless attacks. Ryan said during a conference call, "I'm not going to defend Donald Trump, not now, not in the future. And I'm not going to be campaigning with him over the next 30 days. Lou Dobbs pointed out that obstructionist rhinos, Republican in name only, like Paul Ryan, appear hell-bent on destroying the Republican Party and President Trump. With friends like that, who needs enemies? Ryan is more interested in what's best for his donors, corporate interests, banks, health insurers," Dobbs said. Ryan meekly defended himself, saying, "What's done is done. It's no secret Donald and I had our ups and downs during the campaign," Ryan said. "We merged forces at the end." Dobbs' criticism echoed the observations of other Republicans who say GOP lawmakers like Ryan need to support President Trump fully or step aside. On Monday's Fox News, Sean Hannity, Geraldo Rivera, and Monica Crowley said rhinos like John McCain and Lindsey Graham consistently attack President Trump because they're press whores who are pandering to the liberal media. They're seduced by liberal media in the sense that the more they oppose the president, the more access they have to MSNBC, CNN, and other media outlets who very much want to criticize the president, Rivera said. Crowley agreed. They are so interested in wanting good coverage from the New York Times and Washington Post that they get used by the other side. The next article that I have for you is off of Western Journalism, and it says Obama holds secret meeting with Silicon Valley tech leaders, and there is video in this. A private meeting with billionaire investor Warren Buffett in Omaha, Nebraska. Former President Barack Obama arrived in California's Silicon Valley on Sunday for meetings with tech leaders. There were no public comments made by either Obama or the leaders he met with, as at least one news account dubbed the meetings part of the shadow presidency. Even prior to the end of Obama's presidency, there were expectations that Obama would be a frequent visitor to the region. I would be surprised if he did not spend a significant amount of his post-presidency time and effort connecting the resources and ideas and capabilities that he has learned about Silicon Valley with the kinds of causes that he will choose, an executive chairman of the co-founder of LinkedIn. However, since the inauguration of President Donald Trump, reported to be at the center of the effort to oppose Trump's presidency. Conservative talk show host Rush Limbaugh has accused Obama and the Democratic Party of attempting to sabotage the Trump presidency and do everything they can to render it meaningless and ineffective, or to get him impeached or force him to resign. Representative Mike Kelly, Republican of Pennsylvania, added to that notion last week when he disparaged Obama's motives for remaining in Washington after his presidency. President Obama himself said he was going to stay in Washington until his daughter graduated. I think we ought to pitch in to let him go someplace else, because he is only there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to run a shadowy government, or a shadow government, that is going to totally upset the new agenda. It just doesn't make sense, Kelly said last week. Silicon Valley appeared to be an obvious place to organize a resistance. It has already been a stronghold of opposition to Trump's temporary ban on immigration. Already seen leaders in the technology industry from New York and San Francisco really standing up for the issues they believe in, said Julie Samuels, executive director of Tech New York City, a coalition of tech startups and companies that sent a letter to Trump opposing his immigration order. And I think that's really notable. Business leaders from the other industries reacting the same way. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer on Friday noted that resistance from Obama-era employees is something with which the Trump White House must cope. I think that there's no question, when you have 8 years of one party in office, that there are people who stay in government who are affiliated with and continue to espouse the agenda of the previous administration, Spicer said. I don't think it should come as any surprise that there are people that government during 8 years of the last administration and may have believed in the agenda and want to continue to seek it. The next article is off of SR Rocco Report. It begins, Idaho and Arizona pass bills to remove capital gains taxes on gold and silver. In just the past week, lawmakers in Idaho and Arizona have passed bills removing capital gains taxes from gold and silver coins and bars. Normally, when individuals sell gold or silver, they must pay capital gains on any increase on the value of their precious metals investments. However, gold and silver are really not investments per se. Rather, they perform as real money. In Idaho and Arizona realize that their citizens shouldn't have to pay taxes on their gold and silver holdings because they have increased in value due to debasement of the US dollar by loose Federal Reserve monetary policies. According to the article, Arizona State Senate Committee passes bill to treat gold as money, remove capital gains tax. Today, an Arizona Senate Committee passed a bill that would eliminate state capital gains taxes on gold and silver species and encourage its use as currency. Final approval of the legislation would help undermine the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money. Former U.S. Representative Ron Paul testified today in the Senate Finance Committee in support of House Bill 2014 and HB 2014. The legislation, which previously passed the State House by 32 to 24 vote, would eliminate state capital gains taxes on income derived from the exchange of one kind of legal tender for another kind of legal tender. The bill defines legal tender as a medium of exchange, including specie, that is authorized by the United States Constitution or Congress for the payment of debts, public charges, taxes, and dues. And specie means coins having precious metal content. And it's spelled S-P-E-C-I-E, just in case you wondered. In effect, passage of this bill would, as Paul noted, legalize competition in a constitutional fashion. This Arizona House bill to remove capital gains taxes on gold and silver is a big step forward to reintroduce precious metals back as their rightful role as real money or high-quality stores of value. While the Arizona State Senate Committee passed a bill last week to remove capital gains on gold and silver, Idaho did the same thing just yesterday. According to the article, Idaho House of Representatives votes overwhelmingly to remove income taxation from precious metals. Boise, Idaho, March 14th of 2017. By an overwhelming 56-13 margin, the Idaho House of Representatives today voted to end all Idaho taxation on precious metals, example, gold and silver coins and bars. Bill sponsor, Representative Mike Moyle, a Republican, and entire Republican caucus voted on the measure, or for the measure. If the Republican-controlled Idaho Senate follows suit and Governor Butch Otter, Republican, signs the bill, Idaho citizens will better be able to use gold and silver as a form of savings, which protects against ongoing devaluation of Americans' currency. So we now have 2 states within the week removing capital gains tax on gold and silver. However, Utah was the first state in 80 years to pass a bill back in 2011 that made gold and silver legal tender once again. Thus, individuals in Utah are legal to use gold and silver coins to either pay taxes or for goods and services if both parties agree. But what is even more interesting is that Utah just recently, on January the 27th of 2017, introduced a bill for state gold depository. The article, Utah Bill Sets Stage for State Gold Depository, further encourages the use of metals as money, stated the following. A bill introduced in a Utah legislature would build on state's Legal Tender Act, creating foundation for further action to encourage the use of gold and silver as money and take another step toward breaking the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money. Ken Ivory, Republican, West Jordan, introduced House Bill 224 on January the 27th. The legalization would add several provisions to state law designated to encourage the use of gold and silver as legal tender. Passage would set the stage for expansion of gold repositories in the state and authorities on several sound money policies. Specifically, House Bill 224 would authorize the investment of public funds in specie legal tender held in commercial specie repository. Here we now have third state encouraging gold and silver to be used as real money. Not only does this bill help to reintroduce gold and silver as sound money, it also plans to set the stage for setting up depositories across the state to house its citizens' precious metal holdings. This is a big deal. These are only 3 states pushing for gold and silver to be used as real money once again. I believe it's just setting the stage for more states to follow suit as the US dollar's value continues to evaporate due to massive monetary printing and increased public debt. So as the Federal Reserve meets today to raise the interest rate, or the US government gets ready to increase the debt ceiling above $20 trillion, several states are preparing for time when the US dollar is no longer a viable form of money. Americans better get prepared for what's coming. While the precious metals are still being valued in a manipulated, highly leveraged gold and silver paper trading market, this is not a system that will last for much longer. When the markets finally crack under the massive amount of debt and derivatives, there will be a mass rush on investors into gold and silver. Unfortunately, when it occurs, there will be very little physical gold and silver to go around, only much higher prices. So that backs up what I've been telling you. If you're stacking, you better keep stacking. And if you're not stacking, you better get to stacking. The next article is off of Liberty Writers, and it says it's happening. What Home Depot founder said seconds ago has Trump's jaw on the floor. Home Depot co-founder Ken Ligon told CNBC on Monday that Donald Trump might turn out to be one of America's best presidents. That's because business people love Donald Trump. And it says, look what Ken Ligon had to say about Trump. If President Donald Trump is able to keep defying expectations like he did in the election and push through legislative changes against great odds. He could go down as one of our greatest presidents ever, Ken Legong told CNBC on Monday. Legong is a longtime Republican supporter and a co-founder of Home Depot. He said that Trump's presidency gives the GOP a chance to do great things. And there's video on this if you want to watch that. That says, "Go Ken, go." Watch out what he says about a border tax. Voters are fed up, said Legong on Squawk Box. They did a very dramatic, earth-shattering thing, and now people want to see results. This is why we voted for Trump, and Congress better hear the message or there will be hell to pay next year during the Senate races. And that's all I have for you in this episode, but there's more episodes to follow. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. That way you'll stay informed.